My wife of 13 years announced that she wanted to get back together with her ex-husband, but my 15-year-old daughter supported their love. I didn't get angry. I asked my lawyer to make a plan. In the early morning, the warm sunlight shines through the kitchen window and onto the breakfast table. I sat there with a steaming cup of coffee in my hand, enjoying this moment of peace. Annie sat across from me, flipping through the local newspaper and absent-mindedly stirring her tea. Jessica sat next to me, her eyes fixed on the phone screen, her face still showing a look of disinterest. The clinking of cutlery and the occasional rustling of newspapers were the only sounds in the room. And I have been married for 13 years, and our mornings have always been like this, plain, but with a hint of comfort and a bit of unspeakable fragility. And I'd been through a lot before she met me. Her divorce from Anthony was a nightmare and a mess. Anthony got drunk and beat her, but he was arrested and was able to escape from the terrible man. That experience left deep scars on her, both visible scars on her body and invisible pain hidden deep in her heart. The strain in her voice when she mentioned Anthony's name was enough to tell me how painful that period was for her. Her dark days with Anthony ended. We met at a dinner party with a lot of mutual friends where everyone was having a good time. It was that night that I fell in love with Anne at first sight. Maybe it was her hearty laughter that brightened up the whole room. Maybe it was the attentive look on her face when she listened to me that made me feel valued. We dated for a year and then got married. Jessica, now 15, had been in my life since she was 2, along with Annie. I know that being a stepfather is not easy, especially for a girl as reserved as Jessica. She was polite to me, but there seemed to be a wall between us that I could not overcome no matter how hard I tried. But I don't blame her. I never expected to replace her biological father. I just tried my best to integrate into their lives and find my place. I genuinely cared for them and loved them, and I accepted that Jessica would probably only ever see me as her mother's husband. However, in recent months, Anne has become a different person, becoming more and more like a stranger at home. The warmth and intimacy between us has gradually disappeared, replaced by a growing distance. Our communication became less and less, and our intimate moments became few and far between. She always said she was too tired and didn't want to do anything. She kept her phone in her hand, and her eyes were always on the screen. Every time I walked into the room, she acted as if she didn't see me and didn't react at all. I'm not a fool. These are obviously danger signs. At first, I tried to think positively, thinking that maybe she was under too much pressure or maybe I did something wrong. But as time went by, the uneasy feeling in my heart became stronger and stronger, and there was a voice in my mind that kept echoing, and I could no longer ignore it. So I made a decision and hired a private investigator. $2,000 later, I finally got the answer. Although a good investigator charges a high fee, the moment I know the truth, I feel that the money is well spent. The result really surprised me, and was actually back together with her ex-husband Anthony, the man who had hurt her so deeply, the man I thought she had completely gotten over. Today, I knew that Annie would definitely confront me. As expected, as planned, she folded the newspaper neatly and placed it on the table, her hand gently stroking the edge of the newspaper, as if looking for courage from the folds. She looked at me, her lips tightly closed, and after a long while, she finally spoke. "Jack, I have something to tell you." Her voice was unusually gentle, very different from usual. I put down my coffee, lowered my head, and stared at her. "Oh yes, dear, go ahead." I tried to make my tones sound calm, even a little encouraging. She hesitated, her fingers fiddling with the corner of the tablecloth. "I'm going to be away for a month," she said, and as soon as these words came out, the whole room fell into silence, like a stone falling into the water, breaking the original tranquility. I tried to stay calm, leaning forward slightly and quietly waiting for her to continue. "I want to live with Anthony." Her voice was a little firmer than before, as if repeating this sentence gave her some courage. "It's his birthday this month, and I want to spend it with him." I slowly leaned back in my chair, letting her words float in the air, and tried to calm myself down. On the surface, my expression did not change at all, but it seemed as if there was a burning fire in my chest. However, I suppressed the anger and forced myself to remain calm. "So," I began with a calm strength in my voice, "what are you going to do there? Clean the house, cook for him, or have sex with him? Can't he even afford a prostitute to satisfy his lust? Why must my legal wife play this role?" I said, taking a sip of my coffee, determined not to let my emotions control me. Her eyes widened, and she immediately retorted, "What are you talking about? I'm neither a prostitute nor a maid. I will be like his wife there." I put down the coffee cup, moving slowly and carefully, trying to keep my voice calm, But you're married to me. Isn't anything you plan to do with him a deception to me and a betrayal of our marriage? Without flinching, without hesitation, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "No, it's not cheating because I told you." I nodded, her ridiculous logic sinking into my mind like a heavy stone. "Well, what do you expect from me? For me to wait here for you for 30 days until you come back from playing house with another man?" Her frustration boiled over, her voice tinged with irritation. "Oh, come on, Jack. I have needs and desires that need to be met, and only Anthony can do that." I shot back without hesitation. "Like tying you to a bed and whipping you? Are these the desires you're talking about?" I knew all about her desires because I had seen their chat records and videos. Those scenes were deeply imprinted in my mind and became a nightmare that I could never forget. I remained calm on the surface, but the anger in my heart was like a surging tide, surging deep inside. I looked her straight in the eye and asked, "So you have desires, what about mine? Can I satisfy mine?" She raised her hands irritably. "Okay, you can do whatever you want, but when I come back, you must still be that loyal husband." I leaned forward, my tone cold and thoughtful. "What if my desires aren't fulfilled in these 30 days? What if I find someone who can satisfy me and doesn't want to go back to you? Can you accept that?" Her face twisted instantly. But before she could respond, I turned my gaze to Jessica, who had been watching us quarrel silently. "What do you think, Jessica?" I asked, my voice steady but sharp. "What do you think about your mother putting our marriage at risk by spending a month with her new lover?" Jessica smiled contemptuously and said, "She has her needs and desires. You don't own her. She is not your slave. She can get satisfaction from any man she wants." The arrogance in her tone was like a slap in the face. It was then that I realized that Jessica was not just supporting her mother, she was openly telling me to mind my own business. She was not a neutral spectator, she was totally involved. I could feel it in her eyes and in the tone of her voice. She was just as involved as Anne, and I finally knew the whole truth. Jessica would go to Anthony's house, too. The thought twisted my heart, but I tried to stay calm. I slowly raised my hands in a gesture of surrender. "Since both of you want this, I won't be an obstacle." Anne's mouth curled up slightly into a smug smile that hurt more than anything she could say. But I wasn't ready to call it a day. I continued calmly and deliberately. "However, Annie, I want you to sign a document stating that we are officially and legally separated for the next 30 days. During this period, I will not have any financial or other responsibilities to you or your daughter, and I will be free to pursue my own wishes." Annie narrowed her eyes and looked at me suspiciously. "What are you trying to do?" I leaned back in my chair, keeping a calm and composed demeanor. "I'll call my lawyer right now and have him draft the necessary documents, and we'll go to the court tomorrow to formalize it. It's that simple." I paused, letting my words hang in the air for a moment, and added a hint of sarcasm. "So, you see, I'm clearing the way for you. You can be with any man you want for the next 30 days, and it won't count as cheating because we're separated." The corners of my mouth slightly raised, forming a faint smile, and I continued, "And I, in turn, can also fulfill my own wishes, and no one can stop me." And narrowed her eyes, and a look of suspicion began to cross her face. "Did I miss something? What on earth are you doing?" I slowly stood up from my seat, with an unquestionable certainty. "Because, Annie, your words have already shown that you are determined to do this, so there is no need for me to stop you." I gave her a carefully designed, faint smile. "To be honest, I can just use this opportunity to fulfill my wish." Jessica laughed proudly and said, "Mom, this is a good idea. I didn't expect Jack to support you so much." I turned to her and responded to her arrogance with a calm smile. "Oh, you don't understand." After that, I walked out of the room without saying a word. As soon as I got outside the room, the phone was already in my hand. I called the lawyer and explained the situation simply and clearly. By the afternoon, my lawyer was sitting in the living room, facing in. Newspapers were scattered in front of her, and she didn't even look at the documents. She picked up the pen and signed with her fancy handwriting. Her every move revealed a blind confidence. I leaned back in my chair and watched her quietly. When she finished signing, a very subtle smile appeared on the corner of my mouth. "Now it's done," I said calmly. "It will officially take effect tomorrow." That evening, I told Annie I was going out for a drink and left without explaining or making excuses. When I returned a few hours later, I was not drunk, but I had come back late on purpose to avoid any interaction with her. The next morning, we appeared in court together, and standing beside me, her demeanor calm and confident. The judge flipped through the documents with a calm expression. "Mrs. and Wilson, have you communicated with your lawyer to confirm? In the next 30 days, your husband will no longer provide financial support to you and your daughter. and he can act freely. Do you agree?" And nodded without hesitation. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge shrugged and said, "Okay." That evening, and was busy in the bedroom, packing her things. I hadn't seen her so full of energy in months. Her face was almost radiant with happiness, which was in stark contrast to the tense atmosphere that had permeated the house recently. I leaned against the door, my arms folded, and looked at her expressionlessly. She looked up at me, her excitement evident. "Oh, thank you, Jack. You have no idea how happy I am. I will make it up to you when I get back." Her words sounded almost ridiculous, but I remained calm, smiled faintly, and replied, "Oh, don't worry. I'll make sure I have a good time." After that, I turned and strode out, my step steady but my thoughts in a mess. Everything was arranged, every detail was determined, and it was time to execute the plan. I have always prided myself on being a rational person, able to control my emotions and focus on rational solutions. But standing here at this moment, I feel an unfamiliar pain, a sense of loss that is eating away at my firm resolve. This wasn't just about losing Annie. It was something deeper and harder to put into words. But then again, she had destroyed our marriage long before this moment. Everything I had done to help this family, the new car I bought for her daughter, the high college tuition I paid for her, the overtime I worked all the time, energy and money, all went down the drain. What was all this for? Just for her daughter to tell me smugly that her mom didn't belong to me? It felt terrible. But when did life ever promise to be smooth sailing? Newton's third law of motion states that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. This fundamental truth of the universe still holds true. Now, I'm going to give her a good look at my reaction force. That night, Anne and her daughter went to her ex-husband Anthony's house. I walked to the door and waved goodbye to them for the last time. They deserved such a farewell. When they disappeared, I went into the kitchen and took out Jack Daniels and a glass from the cupboard. I poured myself a large glass, added a few ice cubes, took a sip, and felt the warmth of the alcohol slowly slide down my throat. This was the only thing that made me feel familiar and comforted at this moment. Then I picked up the phone and dialed the number. It was time. "Everything is ready," I said in a steady voice. "Let's get started." The next morning, the sun shone on my face through the gaps in the curtains. I woke up slowly, and a clear and decisive plan had been made in my mind. Since Anne and Jessica had chosen Anthony so decisively and chose to leave this home, there was no need for me to pay for their lives anymore. It was time for them to pay for their actions. The first thing that caught my eye was the Honda I bought for my daughter Annie. I remember when she first saw the car, she complained that the color was not her favorite, but she couldn't hide her love for it. Humph, it's not that good now. If she still wanted the car, she could ask her dear father Anthony to buy it and let him meet all her needs. Without saying anything, I contacted the used car dealership and sold the car as quickly as possible. Watching the car being towed away, I felt an indescribable sense of relief in my heart, as if I was getting rid of a heavy burden. After dealing with my daughter's car, I turned my attention to Anne's beloved car. She treats this car very preciously and always shows it off in front of others, as if everything I do for her is her due and she has never shown any gratitude. But now, I will not indulge her. In the next 30 days, let Anthony worry about her transportation problem. I will never provide her with this convenience again. Similarly, I sold her car and handled every formality neatly. After solving the car problem, I started thinking about the house again. Over the years, they always complained that the house was too big and not cozy enough, and often mentioned Anthony's small and cozy house. Since they like it so much, let them live there for as long as they want. I quickly contacted a real estate agent and listed the house for sale at a pretty good price. Anyway, they didn't plan to come back, so this house didn't mean much to me. After dealing with all this, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Over the years, I have worked hard for this family and sacrificed many of my dreams and pursuits. Now, I can finally live for myself. I have $2 million in my hands, or to be exact, in my offshore account. This money is what I have accumulated over the years, and it is also the capital for me to start over. Without the constraints of family, without their complaints and accusations, I can finally do what I really want to do. 3 days passed in a flash, and the silence at home was a little scary, but this silence made me feel an unprecedented peace. However, this peace did not last long. Suddenly the phone rang. It was Annie. Her voice was trembling. Although she tried to stay calm, her panic was obvious. I called home, but no one answered. "Where are you?" I couldn't help laughing, and the irony in my heart rose spontaneously. I picked up the drink on the side, took a sip slowly, and replied slowly, "Take care of my wishes." After that, I hung up the phone without hesitation, cutting off her response before she had time to say it. That night, my phone was bombarded with calls. First, Annie, then Jessica kept calling. I knew they must have received notifications from the bank that the joint account was empty and the college fund was gone. I can almost imagine their shocked and angry expressions when they heard the news. To be honest, I can understand their feelings, but I also have my own difficulties. Over the years, I have worked hard for them and spent all my money on this family, but what I got was betrayal and deception. Now, I'm just fighting for some of my due rights and fulfilling my own wishes. However, I did not answer their calls immediately. Let them worry for a while. Let them digest the mess I left behind. 3 more days passed, and during these long 3 days, the phone kept ringing, but I never answered. Until I finally decided to answer Annie's call. "Hey Annie, how are you?" I said in a deliberately casual tone. "I'm sorry. I was busy satisfying my own desires and couldn't take your call." She was obviously overwhelmed by anger. All kinds of insults, accusations, and words of guilt poured out of her mind. She even dug up some old things. It was simply a never-ending verbal garbage storm. Some of her words even made me feel confused and unbelievable. But I knew that she had the right to be angry, and I didn't expect her to have any sympathy for me. I just sat there quietly, listening to her venting, waiting for her to release all her emotions. When she finally fell silent, I knew it was time to end this conversation. I don't think it's time to say goodbye yet. I hung up the phone without waiting for her to say another word. For the next 5 days, she called me every day, and each time she called me was more frantic than the last. Her screams seemed to be echoing in my ears, but I had gradually gotten used to this kind of madness and even found it a little ridiculous. She was still the same as before, overreacting when something happened, and she hadn't changed at all. But on the 6th day, when I picked up the phone, I found her voice had become unusually calm. She asked, "Why did you take all the money?" I leaned back in my chair and answered slowly. "Staying in a 5-star hotel and vacationing in Jamaica costs a lot. How can I afford it without emptying your daughter's college fund? This is my dream vacation." "What? How could you do this to me?" Her voice was filled with anger and disbelief. "Well, my wish was that you would stay faithful to me, but that obviously didn't happen. So I had to settle for the next best thing and choose to go on vacation to Jamaica with a young blonde Russian woman by my side." I deliberately provoked her. Inez's voice became hoarse with anger, and she screamed, "You can't escape. When I come back, I will make you pay the price." I could feel her anger burning through the phone like a flame, but to be honest, I wasn't scared at all. I had expected her to react like this. She was always like this. She would only use threats to solve problems. But I didn't want to get involved with her anymore. I was not in the mood to argue with her, especially now. I took a deep breath, my fingers tightened around the phone, and said calmly, "I understand you're angry, but that's not an emotion I want to deal with right now." Before she could finish, I hit the end call button. I didn't want to hear her threats again. Not today, not ever again. A month had passed quickly, and now it was time to move on to the next phase of my plan. I boarded a plane to Thailand with a clear goal in mind. This was more than just a simple trip. It was a brand new beginning for me. In the past, as a software analyst, I was often invited to work in a company in Bangkok, but I always refused at that time, thinking that there was no need to leave home. But now, home has no meaning to me anymore, and there is nothing worth staying for. So I took them up on the offer, and now I'm on my way home. It's a long flight, but it's given me time to think and reflect on how this all happened. When the plane finally landed in Bangkok, I felt a strange sense of relief. I had made my choice and I had moved on. After arriving in Bangkok, the first thing I did was to turn on my phone and call my lawyer. "She should be back today. Please give my gift to her." Now it's time for the truth to come out. Later that day, Anne and Jessica returned home, or rather what they once called home. I couldn't help but imagine what kind of expression they would have when they saw this scene. At the door, a man was already standing there waiting. He walked up and asked very professionally, "Hello, are you Mrs. and Wilson?" and nodded, her face full of confusion and fear. "You are served," the man said, handed her a manila envelope, then stepped back, took a picture, and walked away without saying a word. I imagined the scene, the flash captured in that brief moment, and holding the envelope in her hands, her face full of pain, and the tears began to flow. Jessica stood next to her, looking shocked, her eyes constantly scanning the driveway, and she kept saying, "Dude, where's my car?" in a trembling voice. As I expected, the phone soon started ringing. I let their phones continue to ring, and stayed calmly in the comfortable hotel room. When everything was quiet, I leisurely dialed her number. The phone was picked up almost instantly, and before I could even open my mouth, she erupted like a volcano. "You are not a respectable person at all. You are just jealous of Anthony and can't even control your own self-esteem." Her voice was sharp and piercing, and a series of insults shot out like sharp arrows. Every cheating wife caught in the act seems to throw out these cliches. I didn't interrupt her or even frown, but just listened quietly, neither hanging up the phone nor escaping from the storm, waiting for my moment to strike back. Finally, while she was taking a breath, I asked in a steady tone, "Did you open the envelope?" There was silence on the other end of the line, followed by the rustling of papers. She had apparently seen the contents, evidence of her and Anthony having sex, with detailed records of the timestamp, location, and even the details of how she was tied to the bed. "You know all this?" Her voice trembled for the first time. "Oh yes, I know that," I responded calmly. "You did what you did, and you have to bear the consequences. You didn't try to stop yourself. Why should I stop you? Our marriage was over the moment you decided to cheat on me, hang out with those shady women, and go on vacation to Jamaica," she retorted angrily. "Oh, the next thing is much easier. This divorce was obviously caused by her adultery. I left some money in the joint account, thinking it would be enough for her to go to Anthony's house." I could really feel the tension and naked anger coming from the other end of the phone, but I didn't care at all. The situation had completely turned around, and she was no longer in control. She screamed in pain and despair. "You didn't leave any money for your daughter. How could she go to college?" I responded without hesitation. "She won't go to college. She is not my biological daughter. Her actions have proven time and again that she can count on her biological father's money to go to college." After a while, I heard the phone being snatched away, and then Jessica's voice came. As expected, there was another round of screaming and insults. I knew what was going on and knew that this would be the last conversation with them, so I endured it silently. Jessica's voice trembled with anger, and she asked with anger and suspicion, "You sold my car?" "No, I'm selling my car," I retorted without flinching. "My college fund," she cried, her voice filled with desperation. Unable to suppress the bitterness in my heart any longer, I replied coldly, "I have to make sure I have enough money to fulfill my dream of going on vacation to Jamaica. Besides, it was originally my money, so what's wrong with me taking it back? Just like you said, your mother can find a man at will, and I can spend the money as I wish." She screamed again, her voice shaking with anger and frustration. "What am I going to tell my friends? My car is gone." I remained unmoved. "Just say your useless stepfather sold the car and used the money to finance his vacation to Jamaica. Now you can go back to living with your so-called winner biological father." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a sharp intake of breath from the other end of the phone, and then Annie snatched the phone back, her voice full of accusations. "You stole our money. I'm calling the police." "Please go ahead." My tone was as calm as a deep pool. "You signed that legal document and gave up my financial responsibility to you. I have spent all my money in the past 30 days. Now I am penniless." She immediately retorted, her words full of doubt. "Do you think I will believe your nonsense?" I sneered. "I never expected you to believe it, but in court, I will prove it all." After that, I calmly ended the call and left the last sentence. "If you still want to communicate, call my lawyer. The number is in the envelope. Good luck, Annie." A few days later, I knew Annie would fight back, but I had faith in my divorce lawyer's ability to handle the situation. Sure enough, Annie claimed that I had known she was going to be with her ex-husband and that I approved of it. My lawyer then presented the court with the time stamps and locations of her affair with Anthony, showing that she had had an improper relationship with Anthony 30 days before the agreed date, which undoubtedly constituted an affair because I had no knowledge of it. Therefore, her claim that I knew and agreed to her affair in advance was completely nonsense. She betrayed me and violated my trust in her. In addition, the lawyer quickly proved that I had indeed spent all the money on vacation in Jamaica and consumption in the Cayman Islands, with all kinds of receipts and invoices available, and all expenses were legal and compliant. Furthermore, and herself signed a document waiving my financial responsibility for her during the 30 days she was with her ex-husband. The judge was no pushover. He knew that this was full of manipulation and deception, but the legal procedures were there, the paperwork was detailed and complete, the application had been submitted, and all legal formalities had been completed, so there was nothing he could do. The judge reluctantly ordered that the remaining assets be dealt with according to established legal procedures. At this time, An's lawyer was obviously panicking and tried to ask me to pay child support. My lawyer would not miss this loophole and immediately objected in a firm tone. He pointed out a key fact. Jessica is not my biological daughter, and I have never adopted her, so there is no question of paying child support. But my lawyer did not stop there and made a bold move that made the whole situation even more ridiculous. He argued to the court that I had renounced all worldly responsibilities, chose to become a Buddhist monk, and now had no income, no property, and no obligations. This defense strategy was quite bold. The judge, who had been serious throughout the trial, could not help but almost laugh out loud when he heard this statement. He thought it was all absurd. He looked at and with a slightly playful smile on his face and could hardly suppress his words. "Ma'am, you are really unlucky." The judge's voice echoed in the courtroom, as if announcing the end of this farce. "I can't help you anymore. The divorce application is approved, and the funds in the joint account will be awarded to Annie." A month after the divorce, I learned that Anne and Jessica had moved in with Anthony. However, the reality was far from what they had expected. This was not the happy family they imagined, but a nightmare. Anthony was still the same as always, beating and up when he was drunk, just like in their previous marriage. Maybe in like this rough way of getting along. As for Jessica, she could only helplessly become a silent witness to all this, and had no way to deal with the violence. And simply couldn't leave Anthony. She had nowhere to go, no support system, and she was trapped in this nightmare that I had tried to rescue her from. Now, Jessica can only walk or take the bus to school. The comfort and luxury she once enjoyed are no longer there. As for Anthony, my revenge on him was not violence, but giving him everything he wanted. Now he has to support and take care of this new family, his wife and her daughter. Let him bear the consequences of his actions and face the mess he created. I gave him what he wanted, but it all came at a price. Sometimes, people really have to be careful about their desires, otherwise they may suffer the consequences.